Have you ever considered that your entire understanding of time might be a grand illusion? The way you mark 1 minute after another, the way you wait for tomorrow while recalling a yesterday, could all of that be the trick of your biology or the constraints of your upbringing? Scientists have begun to suspect that our linear sense of time is not a fundamental truth, but a perceptual construct. Ancient mystics from various corners of the world have also hinted that what we call time is anything but straightforward. Right now, you might think you're living in the present, leaving the past behind and awaiting the future. But what if time doesn't flow at all? Countless cultures have taken the passing of time for granted, weaving a comfortable storyline in which each day is distinct from the last. Yet, new evidence from quantum physics and from age-old spiritual traditions points to a reality in which our entire concept of past, present, and future is flawed. Instead, events could be simultaneously happening, or time might be cyclical, the future as inevitable as a wave that keeps returning to the shore. Is it possible that your birth, your prime, and your final moments coexist in an eternal tapestry, hidden behind a trick of perception? In the next few minutes, you're going to step outside your familiar notion of clocks ticking forward. We'll look at real scientific experiments that undermine the sanctity of chronological order. We'll also peer into the words of mystics who assert that everything we experience is one continuous present. Our world may be more alien than any science fiction novel, peppered with invisible depths and intangible mysteries we rarely question. The structure of time might be the greatest riddle we are still trying to solve, and both quantum mechanics and ancient wisdom stand at the frontier, offering a glimpse into a reality more complex than the timeline you scribble in your planner. This inquiry isn't just philosophical fancy or academic exercise. If time, as we experience it, is a constructed lens through which we filter reality, then rethinking time changes everything. How we handle relationships, how we plan for the future, and how we carry emotional baggage from the past. While we usually accept time's relentless march as an unquestionable fact, the unfolding revelations from science and primordial teachings say otherwise. Join us on this deep dive as we unravel the threads of your daily illusions, shining light on a tapestry of existence that may loop, expand, or stand perfectly still. By the end of this exploration, you might wonder if your next moment is truly next, or simply another facet of an ever-present cosmic tapestry. Quantum mechanics is famed for rattling the cages of our most basic assumptions. When physicists studied tiny particles, they found results that contradicted a simple timeline. Consider the phenomenon of superposition. A quantum entity can be in multiple states at once, only committing to a single outcome when observed. In classical thinking, we assume events in time are locked in step, first cause, then effect. But quantum experiments expose the notion that the future might reach back and influence the past. One of the most eye-opening discoveries is the delayed choice experiment, famously popularized by physicist John Wheeler. In it, particles passing through a double-slit setup appear to change their behavior depending on whether the experimenter decides to measure or not, at times even after the particle has ostensibly passed through the slit. This implies the particle's past condition is not fixed until someone observes it. Does that mean what we perceive as a settled event in the past can still be modified by actions in the present or even the future? That's not just mind-bending. It plunges us into an entirely new territory where time might not be a one-way street. The entanglement phenomenon further muddies the waters. Two particles that have interacted can share a mysterious link. Measuring one appears to simultaneously affect the other, regardless of the distance between them. Here again, it seems that the normal flow of events, one thing happening in sequence after another, falls apart. It's as though these quantum sisters ignore conventional barriers of time and space, raising the possibility that time itself is layered or illusory. Physicists like David Bohm and others have even posited that we should look at reality through a wider lens, where hidden variables or deeper orders might unify events in ways that defy standard chronology. These results have forced researchers to question whether our day-to-day sense of clock time is relevant at the smallest scales. If the building blocks of our universe don't follow a linear script, it might mean that linearity is an emergent property, more of a byproduct of large-scale interactions and our limited perspective. The deeper we investigate quantum phenomena, the more it looks as though when things happen can be just as important as what happens, and the lines separating past, present, and future can blur, shift, or altogether vanish. That sets the stage for a thrilling comparison with ancient mystical systems that have, in their own metaphorical ways, cast doubt on our typical sense of chronological inevitability. Long before we had quantum physics or advanced telescopes, seers and sages in various spiritual traditions were describing a reality not bound by linear time. Consider aspects of Hindu philosophy, where the concept of time can be cyclic. Yugas, eons that repeat in grand sweeps, suggesting creation and destruction occur in endless loops. Over in Buddhism, certain texts describe every moment as interconnected, so the notion of an isolated now appears to be a mental construct. Indigenous wisdom across continents, from the Mayan views of cyclical calendars to Australian Aboriginal conceptions of the dreamtime, raises the possibility that what we interpret as chronological progression is more like echoing patterns in a grand tapestry. Surprisingly, these ancient viewpoints align with some of the modern physics claims about time's nonlinearity. Though the language is different, mystics often speak in allegories, metaphors, and symbolic narratives. The underlying assertion that everything is interwoven in ways beyond simple cause and effect resonates strongly with quantum entanglement and superposition. When Buddhist texts assert that phenomena are empty of inherent separate existence, and that time is part of that emptiness, it may mirror the quantum idea that a particle doesn't have a definite state until it's measured. These parallels are more than poetic coincidences. They hint at universal truths recognized by scientifically rigorous minds and spiritually attuned hearts alike. Many mystics claim that our perception of moving from one moment to the next might be an illusion engineered by the mind, a process that helps us make sense of experiences, but does not capture the full spectrum of reality. From certain branches of Taoist philosophy to the Sufi teachings of timeless presence, you find repeated references to a realm beyond the time-bound self. Mystics have long suggested that in deep meditation, trance, or spiritual ecstasy, one can glimpse the greater continuum in which all events simply are, without strict demarcation of before or after. This is reminiscent of quantum experiments where time's usual logic falters, the effect can seemingly precede the cause, or two events remain locked together outside of normal temporal constraints. These ancient doctrines and quantum findings make for strange bedfellows, yet they share a provocative message. The time you experience, day after day, is at best a partial understanding, and at worst, a full-blown distortion. The deeper we probe the scientific realm, and the more we examine the allegories of mystics, the more we realize that our default interpretation might be missing key dimensions of reality. But to see how all this ties together, we need to explore one of the most audacious theories in modern physics: the notion that time might not move at all, but is already laid out in its entirety. Enter the block universe. In this framework, conceived by thinkers like Hermann Minkowski and expanded upon by many contemporary physicists, time is treated as just another dimension, alongside the three dimensions of space. In simplest terms, past, present, and future all exist simultaneously within this grand four-dimensional structure. Rather than our conventional narrative where the present moves forward, the block universe suggests that every moment, from the day dinosaurs roamed to the instant you finish watching this video, is equally real and eternally fixed. Sound like science fiction? It's a serious hypothesis entertained by countless physicists and philosophers. According to special relativity, different observers can disagree about whether two events happened at the same time or in sequence, depending on their reference frame. This relativity of simultaneity hints that what one observer sees as present could be part of another observer's past or future. The block universe goes further, proposing that we eliminate the distinction between different times altogether and view them as coexisting slices of reality. Many scientists see this view as the natural extension of relativity, where time is not an absolute flow, but a coordinate in a higher dimensional continuity. This has uncanny parallels with mystical notions of an eternal now. Some spiritual traditions teach that time as we know it is a mental construct, and that all experiences are accessible in a cosmic sense. The block universe supplies a physics-based interpretation of that possibility. It raises daunting questions about free will, destiny, and the nature of human experience. Do you actually have any choice if your entire life is already set out in the continuum? Or does your conscious experience simply trace a path, giving you the illusion of making decisions in real time? Philosophers still wrestle with how to reconcile individuality, choice, and morality within a block reality. But one thing is clear: it challenges the comfortable notion that our future is open and the past is gone. When we combine the block universe with quantum phenomena like superposition and entanglement, the story grows even stranger. Could it be that the slice we label as the present is not simply a single static cross-section, but a plexus of potential states, only realized when observed? Are ancient mystical tales of a divine vantage point from which everything is visible at once, hinting at this same fundamental structure? These are no trivial puzzles. They lie at the intersection of metaphysics, physics, and the human yearning to know what truly is. Before we can tackle the implications for our everyday lives, we need to delve deeper into how our brains might be complicit in shaping or distorting our experience of time. You might wonder, if time is potentially an elaborate illusion, why do we experience it so convincingly as a forward-moving stream? Neuroscience gives us pivotal clues. Our brain isn't just passively absorbing information, it's actively constructing our sense of reality from raw data. We piece together the present moment using memory, which anchors us to what we call the past, and anticipation, which projects us into a potential future. This process helps us navigate life, avoid danger, and form social bonds, but it can also confine our minds in a linear narrative that might be incomplete. Consider how our perception sometimes slows or speeds up under certain conditions. When we're in crisis, like a car accident or an adrenaline-filled event, people often report that time stretches. Alternatively, in a state of flow or complete immersion in an activity, hours can feel like minutes. Our subjective sense of time's pace is malleable, suggesting it's constructed in part by attention, emotion, and neurological factors. Meanwhile, certain meditative practices teach that by quieting the incessant chatter of the mind, one might catch glimpses of a more expansive state where the distinctions between past and future soften. Could it be that our brains are simply layering one conceptual frame upon another, generating a timeline that feels natural, but might be a restricted viewpoint? This leads some researchers to question whether linear time is a cause or an effect of our cognitive processes. Are we so invested in seeing events unfold in a linear manner because it's evolutionarily beneficial? Our ancestors needed to plan hunts, remember hazardous zones, and anticipate seasonal changes. A linear timeline helps in those tasks. But as we delve into the complexities of quantum experiments and cosmic theories, it's increasingly clear that the universe may not be constrained by the same survival logic that shaped our distant past. Our neural circuitry seems hardwired to perceive cause and effect in an orderly chain, even if deeper reality doesn't always comply. Lately, interdisciplinary efforts linking neuroscience and physics have started to paint a portrait of time as an emergent property. Rather than being an inviolable dimension, time may arise from how conscious observers process quantum possibilities. Think about that for a second. The entire tapestry of chronological order you live by could be a specialized lens, honed by evolution, refined by culture, and reinforced by habit, yet incomplete as a representation of the full cosmic story. At this point, you might ask, can we step outside that framework, even briefly, to experience a reality untethered to our tick-tock routines? Some mystics and even a handful of scientists suggest yes, we can catch fleeting glimpses beyond our usual timeline. In the meditative traditions of Buddhism, practitioners claim to step into states where time dissolves, describing experiences of pure presence that feel oddly eternal. Monks sometimes recount lapses in which hours pass like minutes, or moments stretch into vast expanses of awareness. These accounts resonate with the findings of certain near-death experience studies that record altered perceptions of time, Some individuals report seeing their entire life flash before their eyes in a single, timeless moment. Human intuition has also stumbled upon these cracks in conventional temporality. Think about times you've been in the zone when playing sports, making art, or deeply involved in a passion. You look up and realize that the normal passage of minutes has lost its meaning. Some ephemeral yet powerful sense of timelessness emerges. Could these glimpses be neural illusions, or might they hint at a deeper truth, a partial unveiling of the block universe or a quantum tapestry that defies linear labeling? Scientists studying consciousness speculate that the sense of nowness is a mental construct assembled from multiple data points, sensory inputs, memory retrieval, predictive models of what's about to happen. If these processes were disrupted or retuned, perhaps time wouldn't be perceived as a relentless arrow. Indeed, psychedelic experiences are another domain where participants report a profound shift in how they experience time. In some cases, personal accounts describe stepping outside typical chronology, as though events exist all at once or in a loop. While anecdotal, these experiences support the notion that our default perception of time is not the only game in town. The question remains, if quantum experiments reveal that the future can influence the past, if mystics claim the present is all-encompassing, and if the block universe says our entire timeline is already written, do we have the capacity to rewrite our experience of time in smaller day-to-day ways? Perhaps the real dynamite hidden in these esoteric and scientific revelations is the recognition that we have more agency than we think, not necessarily over the unfolding of events, but over how we experience and interpret them. If time is not the fixed conveyor belt we've always assumed, then maybe the door to a radically different relationship with existence is already open. We need only step through it to see how malleable our lives might become when freed from the tyranny of the ticking clock. Everything we've explored, from the contradictory findings in quantum physics to the cyclical notions of ancient wisdom, culminates in a profound challenge to how we conceive of our past, present, and future. If the block universe is correct, every choice you will ever make already sits in a grand, four-dimensional layout, side by side with every choice you didn't make. If quantum phenomena truly dismiss the arrow of time at the smallest scales, then your sense of causality might be more flexible than you've ever imagined. And if mystics across cultures have been right about shapeless time, then your daily life might be a narrow reading of a cosmic script that offers infinite ways to interpret and engage. What does that mean for how we live, for our relationships, for our quest for meaning? Perhaps you'll leave this video feeling slightly liberated, knowing that the linear clockwork we adhere to is only one interpretation of the data. Or maybe you'll feel a sense of mystery, realizing that from ancient gurus to quantum theorists, humanity has been grappling with the notion that time is not a one-way street, but something far more intricate, more mysterious, and even more accessible if we dare to step beyond ordinary perceptions. In practical terms, allowing ourselves to question time's flow can open possibilities for personal growth. Whether you resonate with the idea of living more fully in the present, as many spiritual teachers advocate, or you're inspired to delve into the complexities of physics research, simply challenging your assumptions about time can be transformative. When you suspect that past, present, and future might coexist, perhaps you'll let go of grudges anchored in old memories, or find more gratitude for each moment, knowing it is as eternal as any future point. Will you consider meditative practices or at least moment-to-moment awareness to peer behind the veil of your everyday timeline? For your final reflection, ask yourself this: if all times are equally real, where does that leave your sense of control? Does our freedom come from stepping into an experience beyond the illusions of sequence? Or is our destiny woven so tightly that our choices are written before we make them? Whatever your stance, quantum mechanics and ancient mystics agree on one fundamental principle: reality is deeper, stranger, and more nuanced than our ordinary experience. Time, as you know it, might be just one page in an infinite cosmic library. So how do you plan to read the next line? Share your thoughts and personal experiences in the comments. Challenge the ideas. Ask hard questions. The nature of time isn't just for researchers or monks. It's for anyone willing to consider the possibility that the future might already be here, waiting for us to realize it. Thank you for journeying through this labyrinth of theories, traditions, and revelations. Remember, the next moment you step into could be a vantage point you've occupied all along. If you dare to believe that linear time is a story we tell ourselves, and not the final truth of existence.